Well, to live in Saskatchewan is to know wind. We all have a relationship with the wind. For some, it may be positive, like for people who rely on the wind for some kiting fun.
The wind was fierce there and things like ripped through the sky. And it was like we are all part of a really cool experiment of how we can have joy in the sky.
For others, though, the wind can be maddening.
It's not going to be nice because the frickin' wind is just going to howl, okay? Every time it warms up, the hot air rises and the wind just howls.
So today on the show, we're talking about how the wind shapes this land and the people on it. We will be taking you to Swift Current, where people are getting ready for the annual Windscape Kite Festival. We'll learn about the conditions that led to the creation of the Shelterbelt system. And we want to hear from you. How does the wind affect your life here in Saskatchewan? I know it does. Does it change the way you do your job or recreation? Call now with your Saskatchewan wind stories, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, wind is definitely something we've always had to contend with here. In fact, early settlers that came here to farm needed something to block the wind. Otherwise, their crops, their veggies, their homes would be swept away. Shelterbelts provided protection. Bill Schrader is the author of Trees Against the Wind. He's giving a book talk in Indian Head at 1 o'clock, right after Blue Sky at the Indian Head Public Library. So I caught up with him earlier, and I started by asking him what impact the wind had on those early settlers here in Saskatchewan.
I think largely when the settlers first arrived in around the turn of the century, they were I think they're probably flabbergasted. I always think of a homesteader getting off the train at Herbert, Saskatchewan, and venturing to where his homestead was, and seeing nothing but sky and grass, and feeling a constant wind in his face. I just can't imagine what that must have felt like, someone coming from Europe or Eastern North America and being faced with that. It must have been pretty daunting. In fact, I'm sure many times they wondered, what the heck am I doing?
Daunting indeed. But what were the challenges that came with that wind in trying to build a life here?
Well, I think the first and foremost was protecting their farmyards. The wind was constant, and it could be devastating, especially during storms and that. They having some protection around their farmyard, I think they felt was essential. In fact, I think it was probably after they built their house, the next thing they wanted to do was put in trees. Unfortunately, at that time with those early settlers, there wasn't a good source of trees that were actually hardy to the prairies. In fact, many homesteaders would actually bring trees with them, or seeds or cuttings of poplars with them to actually plant around their farm. Unfortunately, most of those didn't survive. They just weren't hardy enough for our climate.
So what ended up happening? How did they deal?
Well, the trees would die, and they would be very discouraged, and sometimes they even left. They abandoned their homesteads and went back to an environment they were more comfortable living in.
Those that did stay, what was the plan with the support from politicians? How did they end up getting protection from the wind? What role did Shelterbelts play in this?
Well, I think it played a very important role, and the government at that time, and a fellow by the name of Clifford Sifton, who was the minister of the Department of Interior, recognized that there was a problem. They had spent a lot of effort getting people to come to the homestead in the prairies, and when they got there, they were generally not very happy with the environment they were faced with. So Sifton decided that something needed to be done, and he commissioned a fellow by the name of Stevenson to investigate what could help keep farmers or settlers happy on the prairies. And he suggested, give them trees to plant. That's what they want. That's what they need. So in 1901, the federal government or Dominion government at the time brought in the cooperative tree planting program, which led to the tree nursery at Indian Head, which provided trees and shrubs to settlers and homesteaders and farmers for over 100 years.
What kinds of trees were they growing at that nursery?
Well, they were growing. There was actually not a lot of tree species. Caragana was probably the number one species that they were growing, followed by Russian poplar, green ash, Manitoba maple, American elm. And a little later on, they started producing things like Colorado spruce or white spruce. But really wasn't a lot of species at that time. They were more focused on getting trees that would survive in the ground so farmers would have that protection that they needed.
And what kind of protection did those trees provide? Maybe paint a bit of a picture. So, where were they planting them in order to get the best kind of protection?
Well, they were mainly planting them on the north and west sides of their farmyard because that's where the most of the wind was coming from. And really, they were planting these trees to slow down the wind. And in fact, trees are very effective means of slowing down the wind, and they've been used for many years on the Canadian prairies just to do that, to control the wind, to like you said in your introduction, to allow the farmer to grow their veggies, to sit in the yard without being blown away, but also to later on to protect their fields. And that became very important as we approached the 1930s and the Dust Bowl era. Tree planting was very important for controlling wind erosion, and actually still is. I mean, trees actually, are nature's way of blocking the wind.
So what happened at the end of this program? I am curious about today and what role Shelterbelts still play in farming, but what was the evolution of that program?
Well, the program went for 112 years. It went through 2 world wars. It went for several massive droughts, almost being shut down in the 1930s to continuing on and being a very important part of agriculture for well over 100 years, providing farms with farmers with a way to deal with the wind. And it, not only was it for erosion, also these trees provided reduced evapotranspiration on the fields, mainly because they were blocking the wind. They also provided protection and habitat for much of the wildlife that were associated with the prairies, or migratory birds, mammals. Pollinators are extremely important now. They don't like windy conditions either. They like to get out and work in the fields, but they don't like the wind. So if you have shelter belts or trees to mitigate this wind, you're going to have better pollination services happening on the landscape. And maybe now we don't need them as much for wind erosion because of the changes in farming practices, but they still provide a function around biodiversity and I guess making keeping nature on the land.
What are the best trees to plant in a shelter belt? Knowing what we know today, what would be the best type of tree?
Well, I think you want a tree that's going to be long-lived. Some of your listeners may not agree with this, but Caragana still remains one of the best shelter belt trees for wind control. That coupled with a long-lived tree like a maple or an ash, or even a conifer such as spruce or pine, in sort of having multiple rows, really are effective in controlling the wind.
Without those shelter belts, what would the wind have done to people? I'm wondering how the wind affects us emotionally, what it does to our mental well-being, how it impacts our psyche.
Well, you can just think of the last few weeks we've had very windy conditions, and what do I hear when I go to the coffee shop is, when is the wind going to stop? Wind affects people. They don't necessarily like it. They find it disrupts what they want to do. It's just not a pleasant environment for them when it's windy. and people, I think, psychologically, uh, really find it to be something that makes them not happy.
So what do you say to people when they complain to you about the wind? You have a unique perspective. The fact that you've looked into the history of Shelterbelts and all the work that went into protecting farms from the wind. So what do you say to people now when they complain to you about the wind?
Well, I say we can't get rid of the wind. It's going to be here. That's just part of our environment. But we can, um, you can deal with it. And I always tell people, and this is an old Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
And the reason to plant it is to help protect us from the wind.
That's exactly right.
Bill, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for this.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa.
That is Bill Schrader, the author of Trees Against the Wind. I spoke to him a bit earlier today because at 1 o'clock he will be giving a talk about his book at the Indian Head Public Library. And of course, Indian Head, a significant place where many of these trees were growing. I'm Lisa Grabinski. This is Blue Sky. Today we are focusing on the wind. We want to hear your stories. There are a lot of them, I'm sure, even from just the last couple of weeks. I'm on a Facebook group for Regina Beach, and it looked like everything was flying into the water. So if you've got some stories, give us a call, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. We do have a caller on the line already. Fred joins us from here in Saskatoon. Hello, Fred.
Hello.
What's your take on the wind?
Well, I would say this is one of the highlights of my experience in Saskatchewan. I'm from Montreal, and I discovered wind here as a sport. I've been harnessing the wind for 15 years, going in fields in the winter, and ski and boards on the water. Summer.
So you're one of those kiteboarders?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we're a club in Saskatchewan. We just had a major event last weekend. Sunday was just a blast. So I totally understand people being pissed off by the wind. Like when you don't play with it, it's not as fun. But for me, it's a great thing that Saskatchewan is windy.
Yeah, that's totally. It terrifies me a bit, but I sure love watching you guys do it. So it was not something you had done prior to moving to Saskatchewan. You took up kiteboarding in all seasons once you got here.
Yeah. Here it's the open field. It's just perfect wind space, and comparing Quebec mountains and trees are not, as you were saying, protected from the wind. So we're far from trees in the field and lakes, and it's very healthy mentally and physically. Like I wouldn't move out of Saskatchewan, and part of that, I thought about that. Well, I could move like there or there. But like, there's no access to kiting in 15, 20 minutes from town. Like buddies kiting on the river in Saskatoon on a wing. Anyway, it's very, if people could pick up slowly.
But what kind of fitness level do you need, though, to do it?
Not much. There's guys with 75 years old riding right now. Like you can, it's safe now. It's a learning, but you can always control. There's a major risk, like kiting especially, like with 70 winds, it's quite scary.
Yeah. So what was it? What were the conditions like on the weekend when you brought all those people together? What was it like?
It was a lot of waves and swells on the lake. Winds of 50 to 60, 70 Like it was. We're all in kites, 7-meter kites. It was about 25 people. Yeah, we got a good for Father's Day. It was the 30th Wind and Water celebration on this weekend.
Oh, I love it. And so you now believe that the wind is part of your identity?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Once you get hooked up, like I'm looking for where I'm going to kite next. When the wind's going to pick up again. Checking the app every day. I love it.
Oh, well, I love that you called.
This spring has been amazing, by the way. Anyway,
no, I don't want you to stop because I'm into this because I've been complaining about the wind. I've been cycling and it's not great. Yeah. So I just need to switch sports. So you have had a good spring, hey? It's been really windy.
Yeah. If you don't harvest it, you're just like suffering it, let's say. For power is good too. Okay, well,
Awesome. Fred, thanks for calling. Really great to talk to you.
have a good day.
You too. Take care. Yeah, enjoy the wind. Yeah, that's Fred giving us a call here in Saskatoon. We'd love to hear your stories too. 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. We're going to introduce you to a couple of people from the Swift Current Kite Festival, but I want to share an email with you. We got one from Kurt who writes, "Oh man, this brings back one heck of a memory. It was springtime around April of 1997-ish. We had one heck of a north wind coming across the prairie south of Cardiff. So being a bored farm kid, I strapped a huge, and I mean huge, chunk of styrofoam, like a backpack to my back, to work as a sail. I jumped on my bike and made my way down the driveway to the road. Soon enough, I was sailing south at a good clip, enjoying the speed and ease of my travels. What a great success. That was until I remembered, as I saw, the T intersection coming up 2.5 miles south of the farm. Ah, man! Now 2.5 miles doesn't sound far. I know I could still just see the farm. When you're fighting with a giant chunk of styrofoam and trying to push a bike into a heavy Saskatchewan springtime gale, it feels like it might as well be 100 miles. I still remember struggling with my head down and pushing my way back, determined to beat the wind and not give up, arms straining and stretched out, pushing the bike handlebars as the sound of my light load bonked and banged around on my back, cussing every step as I watched the road beneath me slowly go by. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of tires on gravel. My dad came to save me. He was laughing his head off, and I couldn't help but do the same. We loaded up my sail and bike in the back with me as the strapping and headed home. When we got there, my mom was having a good laugh too. Supper was on the table, and I was glad to get out of the wind. So worth it." Kurt, thanks for emailing bluesky@cbc.ca or give us a call, 1-800-716-2221. Well, I think we're going to go to Swift Current next, or maybe we'll go to another caller who joins us on the line. We've got Jonathan in Saskatoon. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Lisa.
Oh, I know who you are.
Hey there,
This is Johnny,
Yeah.
another kite surfer. I see you all the time out there.
That's right. And your neighbor as well.
Yeah. So you come up a lot, actually. Anytime it's windy out, and people are like, "Who are the kite surfers?" I'm like, "Oh, I think that's Johnny from Escape Sports."
Yeah.
What got you into it?
Oh, kiting? You know what? I think, it was probably over 20 years ago now. Just, I remember seeing it online at some point and just thinking like, wow, we get plenty of wind. We have lots of space here in the province. There's an abundance of lakes in pretty much any direction you go. And so I just I was self-taught like a lot of us were back then. It was a matter of reaching out, finding some of this early, rather crude kite gear that was around back then. And since then, it's kind of neat. The sport has evolved a lot and certainly refined. The gear is now like way safer, way better behaved. And there's even now some like new disciplines of wind sports that have started to evolve the last 5 years now.
Some new disciplines?
Yeah,
Tell
it's
me
really
about
exciting.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, new disciplines. So there's one that you may or may not have seen. It's called hydrofoiling. Wing foiling is what the wind version of it would be. And what it looks like is it kind of looks like windsurfing in that you're holding a sail in your hands, an inflatable wing sail kind of. And then on your feet, you're standing on something that looks like a surfboard, but on the bottom of it is this we call it a hydrofoil, and it's a mast and basically like a little underwater airplane about 3 feet underneath your board. And when you get a little bit of speed on this thing, the hydrofoil will actually lift you and your surfboard off the water, and you'll be hovering, flying across the water about 2-3 feet above the water. Feels like you're on a magic carpet or something. You're flying along. You feel no chop. It is silent. It is thrilling. It's amazing sport. Yeah.
Wow. So I think I have seen you do that. I didn't even know the difference. What do you think embracing the wind has done for you personally? Like we heard from Fred earlier, who feels like it's now part of his identity. What do you think the wind has done for you?
Well, I know for me, like I'm I found that wind has gone and allowed me to enjoy pretty much absolutely any day that we get. If it's a calm day, there's no end of things that I love to do. I play a lot of disc golf, go play whatever, catch, biking, you name it. It's awesome. But we do get some big wind days. Sometimes it's overcast, cloudy, rainy, and I know a lot of people struggle with those days. And those of us who are into wind sports, I mean, we see that on the forecast, and we start trying to clear your calendars and see that you can, get the day off so that you can rip down to the lake and have just an amazing time. And so it really allows you to make the most of any day that you've got, not sort of waiting long stretches between the nice sunny 25-degree days, but finding ways to enjoy all the other ones too. Yeah. So I just find it's such it's just a real blessing to have something that you love to do on what would otherwise be crummy weather.
Yeah, and think about how much the wind is part of the Saskatchewan experience, right? We live with it, and so you're not just living with it, you're embracing it.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know that last spring we hardly got any, and probably most people were just obviously enjoying that, and the poor kiters and foilers we were a little sad because spring went by and we hardly got any days of riding in. But this year it's been quite the opposite. There's been so many good days. So yeah, there's a lot of happy riders this year, that's for sure.
No kidding. Johnny, thanks for calling. I really appreciate it.
Hey, of course, Lisa. Yeah.
Have a good afternoon.
Care.
Bye.
Yep, you bet. Bye-bye.
Hi, that's Johnny Story giving us a call from here in Saskatoon. You can call us to 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. You can talk about how you're embracing the wind the way Johnny and Fred seem to be, or you can complain about it. We'll take that too. We'd love to hear all perspectives on the wind because it's so much a part of the Saskatchewan experience. Right now, let's check in with the CBC's David Shield, who joins us. David, what's making news today?
A $4 million solar power project has been unveiled at the Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plant. The plant will reduce energy consumption by about 10%. That should amount to about $300,000 per year in savings. The city of Moose Jaw will need to throw out its waste management plans and try a new course. It issued a statement late yesterday afternoon that the RM of Moose Jaw rejected its application to build a solid waste management facility. The facility was planned for just north of Moose Jaw city limits. And the Windscape Kite Festival will take to the air this weekend in Swift Current. It happened after a group of volunteers stepped up to pitch in. The festival almost didn't happen due to a lack of money and volunteers last year. And I'll have a full newscast for you coming up at 1 o'clock.
We'll be talking more about that festival in a moment. Our focus today is the wind. So, David, do you have any windy stories?
Yeah, the only one that comes to mind is, so my cousins in southern Saskatchewan grew up in the neutral hills around Oyen, and one very, very windy day when I was visiting, they decided to try and fly using tarps. So they'd sort of strap these tarps on themselves, and they were about 10 years old, and I believe they actually got onto the roof of their house, but did not make it. They were not airborne. They were very disappointed.
Okay, well, I don't have any stories like that.
Oh, there you go.
David, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is the CBC's David Shield. Share your wind stories with us, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, we're now taking you to Swift Current, where preparations are underway for the annual SaskPower Windscape Kite Festival. It is happening this weekend, and we'll be drawing kite flyers from across the world. The festival has been running since 1998, and our guests today were there in the beginning. David Tuttle has been building and flying kites for nearly 40 years, and Kim Hotaling is the former director of the Art Gallery of Swift Current and longtime volunteer with the Windscape Festival. They're both on the line right now from Swift Current, and so David, welcome to Blue Sky.
Hello.
Hi, and Kim, hello to you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good to have you both with us. So, Dave, I want to start with you. How did you first really start getting interested in kites?
Excuse me. It was at art school. I went to art school in Toronto in the late 70s, early 80s, Ontario College of Art. And our first year class one of our first year classes was called Explorations. And there's a variety of weird projects. And one of the projects was build a kite. And we built the kites, but we never got a chance to fly them. So probably the next spring, the kites got thrown out. So I went out and started buying kites, and pretty much it sort of attracted me right away. And so, yeah, that was the start at art school.
And you could not live in a better place for actually flying those things. So tell me about being from Swift Current and the role that the wind plays in your life in Swift Current.
Okay, I'm actually from the West Coast. I'm from BC.
Oh, you're from BC.
So,
okay, so
yeah.
you don't.
So I started kite flying in Toronto.
In Toronto.
And then I moved to Sorry?
In Toronto, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then I moved to, after art school, I moved to Vancouver for 20 years, and I got really I got a job in a kite store, and I just got, sucked in or taken in by, I joined a kite club, and then, there's a whole learning experience that comes from that kite community. And just started flying every weekend, and, as much as I could, and started building kites eventually. And the wind in Vancouver is much different than here. It's steadier and it's not as strong. So when I came out here for the festival, you got to get used to the wind here. So
yeah, it's something. Hey, I guess I should be putting that question to Kim. Kim, you're the one I should be asking about the role the wind plays in Swift Current. Tell me about what it's like.
Well, I think we've heard a little bit about what I'm going to suggest in our earlier speakers, but I think it plays kind of a mixed, kind of a mixed meaning for us. There's the kind of negativity that comes with the wind, the destruction it can cause, the irritation, that kind of thing, but also the fun you can have with it, and the kind of joy. And I think a lot of the history of Swift Current was in development and farming and so forth, and they went through all that experience of the wind erosion and so forth that the farmers would have had, and building the Shelterbelts and so forth, and then now we've kind of resolved those kind of challenges in the industry, and now the wind is just a daily part of our life, and it's how you what kind of attitude you want to have towards it, And so for us, it's and for a lot of other people, you want to look at the potential in it, and the potential to have fun, and to kind of identify the wind as a positive and a special part of our provincial and community identity.
Mm-hmm. Has it given people some pride to be from a windy place, Kim?
Well, I mean, that relates to how we started the Kite Festival, really. When I first came to Swift Current to be the art gallery director and curator, I wanted the art gallery to serve the community in a really kind of meaningful way. And at that time, the economy was in a slump, and there was a real sort of self-esteem problem in the community. There was a kind of a lack of pride. There was a lot of worry and challenge and so forth. And so I wanted to look at, and in talking to people, the kinds of things that they were negative about. They were definitely negative about their weather. They were negative about the landscape. They were tired of hearing people refer to a place like that as the middle of nowhere, or there's just miles of nothing, when it's really their home. Like it's their farms. It's their, this is where they live. This is not the middle of nowhere, and so I think there was a lot of discouragement. And so the art gallery kind of set to trying to create exhibitions and opportunities to kind of turn that vision around and see our landscape, see the place where we live in a more positive light, in a different way, to see the real beauty in it all. And so in 1997, I invited David to curate an exhibition of handmade kites by artists from across Canada. And when the kite flyers were kind of sending their artworks to us, they wanted to know when they could come and fly. And this triggered an opportunity for us, because we could see that if kite flyers from across the country, or the best of the best, wanted to come and fly in Swift Current, this was just a great opportunity. And so we developed a kite festival, and sort of tried to design something that would work specifically for Swift Current. And then I wanted them to see this festival and see this in the right light. And our landscape around Swift Current was created through erosion, through ancient waterways, and the wind blowing the land and rolling it into these wonderful kind of heaving and rolling hills that we have here. And so I wanted people to kind of see that in the right way. And this is when we formed the name Windscape. It's the landscape that was formed by the wind. And so Windscape became the more kind of poetic spin on that, so that people would kind of see their place in the right light. And then sending these beautiful artworks into the sky, so that we can also appreciate that wonderful living sky that we have, that it also tumbles and rolls and changes every few minutes as a result of the wind.
Kim,
And
I love everything that you're saying. Like, you're speaking my language here as someone who's from Saskatchewan. I just think you describe that place and what the wind and what the sky does to us here just so beautifully. I love it.
yeah, and the thing is, it's true. And if you want to tell the people who live here that that's really the way it is, and they have to see it in that way. And in seeing it that way, it builds that pride that they need, that pride of place. It builds that confidence that they're in the right place. This home is home, and it should be, and it's not the middle of nowhere. And with that pride and with that confidence, they can go forward. They can build a bigger, better community. They'll have the confidence to invest and things like that. It just nothing but growth as a result of that pride. So we want people to kind of see the landscape in that way. And so the Kite Festival has really been wonderful for that. Then people, the flyers were coming from around the world, and then tourists were coming from across the country, across North America and beyond. And they were coming here, and they were going to the festival and saying, "This is wonderful. What a beautiful place you have." And this is, and so people are now hearing people from everywhere else confirming just how wonderful this place is.
Yeah.
And so it's been very reinforcing, very good for our community, very good for tourism, very good for our province.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple of callers who want to share their stories about the wind. But Dave, I just want to ask you a question before we get to that, because your understanding of wind is likely different than most people. So how has your understanding of wind changed over the years as you've gained experience flying kites?
Probably, yes. I mean, I don't know, understanding of wind. Geez. Well, you get to learn what you can do. For us, it's for more traditional kite flyers, other than the buggy and the traction kiting, we're sort of, we have to deal with a lighter kind of wind. We don't go out when it's 70K with the people doing traction kiting, that's their wind. That's not our wind for single line flying. We can't really do that. We got to be a bit choosier. So you sort of learn about the wind and what it can do at different wind speeds, and what you're likely to encounter in different conditions. if there's houses or there's trees or the shape of the land affects the way the wind flows, that sort of thing. So as a kite flyer, you get to know, you learn about conditions and things that will affect the wind and your flying experience.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it takes a while to, I guess, to build that up.
So interesting.
I mean, because wind can be bumpy. I mean, if you're a dual line flyer and you're flying across the wind, it's like a bumpy road. You can feel, you won't notice that unless you're flying a multi-line kite and tracking across the ground. So, you learn things like that from kite flying.
I'm speaking today with a couple of people connected to Windscape, David Tuttle and Kim Hotaling. Both are joining us today from Swift Current. We're talking about the wind and the role it plays in our lives here in Saskatchewan. You can call us 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca with your stories. Shelley joins us on the line right now in Saskatoon. Shelley, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you. I do have a wind story.
I can't wait to hear it.
It was in the mid to late 90s. I can't remember if it was after my third or fourth kid, but feeling a little housebound. And my dad came up from Regina to visit, so we asked if he would watch them while we went out for a rollerblade. Very calm, lovely evening. And they had just put new asphalt on Highway 5 on the shoulder, and we thought, well, we'll just go out there. And just started off past the overpass, and I was ahead of my husband somewhat and going down the hill. And then I heard him yell, so I turned around to see what he's yelling about. And then all of a sudden, it was like somebody slapped me on my back and just pushed me so hard. And because we had been in a rush to go out, we didn't have our helmets on or anything. And I got pushed into the ditch, and even standing in the ditch in the tall grass, the wind was so strong that it pushed me along, and I just saw my husband whiz by, and we were unable to stop. I grabbed a pole at that point, or a road sign, and then I realized I'm way down in the ditch. Nobody's going to see me here, and I took my blades off and crawled up to the top. But of course, my husband didn't know that. He only got stopped by the Manhattan Hill, and he flagged someone down, got a ride back, and where I had been was all crashed over. There's a drive in there, and the fence was over, and then one of the screens was over, and that's the last place he'd seen me. So of course, he's freaking out.
Oh my gosh!
And then in the meantime, I crawled up, and some car went by, and I saw the lights, and then it started raining and stuff was blowing, so it was really hard to see. And this young girl went past me, but then she came back and she said, I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but I guess you're not hitchhiking. And I was very grateful for that. And I said, no, I'm not, but could you take me back to the gas station? And I walked into the gas station, and everybody just looked at me and said, are you Shelley? And I guess my husband had been there freaking out. And in the end, we all got together, and 2 days later, Shakespeare in Saskatchewan had been canceled, and now people were saying, well, they were talking in line as they were. 2 days later, I heard this voice that I recognized was a friend I taught with, and she knew the girl that picked me up. And she was telling the story, but not knowing it was me.
Oh.
And then she knew the girl, so I was able to thank her. But I have grown to have a very great respect for wind because we had absolutely no control.
Yeah.
Over what was happening to our bodies at that point.
Isn't that true, to have respect for the wind? Yeah, it can do a lot of damage, and you've got to stay safe when those winds really pick up. Well, Shelley, thanks for calling. It's quite the story.
Who would go rollerblading then? And it's like, well, it wasn't like that when we started.
It comes up, right? It can come up quite quickly.
Yes.
Oh, Shelley, thanks for calling. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Take care.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye. We also have Paul Emile on the line, who's from near White Fox. Hello, Paul Emile.
Good afternoon. Having been raised in southern Saskatchewan in my teenage years, we didn't like the wind at all because it would really we'd have to use more Brill cream. If anybody knows what that is.
I'm like,
It sounds like, oh, what's he talking about? What's the stuff you put in your hair to hold it together? It was like a grease.
Oh.
Anyway, it was pretty strong down there around Gravelburg. But right now, wind where I live is a mixed blessing. It's we've had 24 centimeters of rain in the last 3 weeks. So there's a lot of water in the fields, and it needs wind and heat to dry up. Otherwise, it's going to be a serious situation, especially in hay crops. But the ground is so saturated and so soft that any amount of big wind, 50, 60 and more kilometers, it just plows the trees right over. So we have trees on the roads, trees in the fields. They just get uprooted like real quick. So, we need wind, and we don't want too much wind, and it's going to be a very tricky summer, I guess. And, as for Caraganas, in the boreal forest, it's an invasive species. I'm sorry.
I know, that's why he said, Bill Schrader said that he mentioned Caraganas, and he's like, no, not all listeners are going to agree with me here. Yeah, Caraganas have caused some issues.
Well, it chokes out the native trees in this area, and then you can't get rid of it at all. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah, they're a tricky tree, Paul Emile. I appreciate you saying that. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. That was Paul Emile calling from near White Fox. He talked about we need some wind to dry things out, but you don't want too much wind, and that's a great segue back to Kim and David from the Windscape Festival. Kim, you need wind. No wind is no good for your festival, but what about if it's too windy? What are the perfect conditions for Windscape? Kim?
Well, the ideal speeds are probably in the a lot lower than what we often get. But throughout the day at Windscape, the wind condition kind of changes, and too strong is probably the worst, I would say. David, what would the ideal speeds be for most of our kites?
Anything over 35K is too much.
Oh.
Yeah, which it's just hard on the kites. It's actually, with a lot of people bringing bigger kites, it's actually sort of dangerous. That's why we have a special field for guest kites, because things that spin at high speed, or there's lines that can burn you. So it's just really hard. And if it's blowing 40 or 50, it's also hard to bring them in again. And also they can break away, they can pull their anchors, they can, if they're of any size. So anything really, when we were in Vancouver, 10 to 20 was the max. Out here, we don't often get that. Every day the wind is over 30, so we have to make do. But the absolute limit would be probably 40, and you won't see many kites up when it's that windy.
Right.
And a lot of small kites won't fly in that anyways. And they just get blown apart, or they just fly in circles. So, 0 to say 35 is and even 35 is pushing it. But we can fly in no wind. I mean, if we have a lot of people have special kites for no wind.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, you just have to play with them more, and they're made out of special materials and might be larger, but built for lighter winds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can fly in no wind. You can fly indoors, with no wind easily.
So interesting.
I mean, it's a different technique.
Yeah.
So
who knew?
As the wind conditions change throughout the festival, the kite flyers are constantly changing kites, like putting up something different, and things are coming down. And so visitors can't be discouraged if they see no kites, because they'll only be down for a little while, and then either new ones will go back up, or the wind will have changed again to more ideal conditions. So it's a kind of it's a game that we play with the condition of the wind. So.
We have another caller on the line who wants to share her story about the wind. We've got Kira in Saskatoon. Hello, Kira.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for accepting my call. I'm really enjoying your show. And I have a story to share about the wind and my experience of wind in Saskatchewan. I was doing my kind of a community project, economic class community project about the wind because Saskatchewan and Manitoba is incredibly rich about wind, and there's the wind maps. And like when you see the wind maps, Saskatchewan and Manitoba is very, very strong wind. So for some reason, maybe it was a coincidence, but the next day I made a presentation, and then I'm biking to university in the Mewassan Trail, and it was so windy. And I was blown away. It was against the physics, but I'm going down, but wind stopped me from going down. And I said, whoa, this is incredible proof that wind can be so strong. So I totally 100% agree that we respect wind. Wind is incredible power. And so I wish we could celebrate wind in Saskatchewan more often.
I feel like nothing ever stops you from biking, Kira. And so you're having to contend with that strong of a wind. Wow. What's your strategy typically for biking through the wind? Because I know nothing really stops you.
Well, smile. And actually, I read this book by Paul, I forget his last name, but it's about, I think it's, I forgot the name of the book, but it's Alchemist. And so in his book, he teaches that you actually can talk to the wind. And it's incredible. It kind of connected me with my roots, like my roots are shamanic. And so in shamanic roots, you talk to wind, talk to anything, like you talk to anything. And so then I talk to the wind. Sometimes I'm going on the bridge and the wind is very strong, and I say, yeah, I can feel your wind. I can feel your power, and I just kind of accept the powerful things and smile away, I guess.
I'm taking that with me. I'm doing an event this weekend, and I'm a bit worried about biking out from Pike Lake on the highway and what the wind will be like. So I'm going to smile, and I'm going to talk to it, and it's going to be just fine. So, Kira, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care, Kira. Bye-bye. It's Kira joining us in Saskatoon. I'm Leisha Gravinsky. You're listening to Blue Sky. We have been focusing on the wind. I want to ask one last question to Kim and to David, but have you been following the forecast? How's it looking for the weekend for the festival? Kim?
Well, it's been changing quite a bit. We thought we were going to get, rainstorms and so forth on Saturday morning and that, but no, it's cleared up quite a bit. And I think winds are going to be kind of reasonable, kind of on the high side for a lot of the kites, but still it's going to be breezy, which is nice. I think the weather's actually going to be quite good. I don't want to, talk to the wind in the wrong way, but we're hoping it goes well. Yeah.
Yeah, David.
Sunday is supposed to be lighter wind, from what I looked this morning. Heavier wind on Saturday, lighter on Sunday, and that's the way it always goes.
Okay.
It's always up and down, or it's never. We got to get what we get.
Yeah. Let's talk nice to it then over the next few days so that we're all in good shape for whatever event we're doing on the weekend, whether that's a kite festival.
As long as there's no rain. The rain is the killer.
Yeah, I don't want rain either. Well, this has been delightful. You've really made me appreciate where we live. I've been doing a lot of complaining this spring. It has been windy, and I'm looking at it in a different way. So huge thanks to both of you. Kim, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And David, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Take care. David Tuttle has been building and flying kites for nearly 40 years. Kim Hotelling is the former director of the Art Gallery of Swift Current and a longtime volunteer with the Windscape Festival. The festival is happening on Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 5. You can find a full agenda online. Just search windscapekitefestival.ca. One thing we didn't talk about is just how they really found themselves in a precarious financial position, and it appears that they've come back stronger than ever. You can read about that on our website and hear about it in the news as well. I'm Leisha Gravinsky. Thanks for listening to Blue Sky. Let's hold on to our hats if it is windy, and we'll talk nice to the wind over the next few days. Take care.